What's up, everyone? In this video, we're going to talk about the difference between Strapi and Payload CMS. There's a whole comparison chart we're going to go over to see which CMS makes sense for you. And the reason this is coming up is this is one of the questions that I get quite a bit. Like, I just got it on my last live stream about why would I choose Strapi or why would I choose Payload CMS? And why would I choose Payload CMS over Strapi? Payload's kind of my go-to, so this you will find will bias towards Payload CMS over Strapi, but I want to be able to discuss it line by line and figure out which one really makes sense. So this will be a discussion. I'll go through very casually the differences between the two, the similarities between the two, and hopefully this is informational, educational, and helps you make a good decision based on what you need from a CMS. The reason this is coming up, though, is with the official Payload CMS Discord, this image came up, and this is from the Strapi comparison page. I have the actual version of this, so we won't be looking at this, but the joke was that Strapi didn't even try with Payload here. It's just company size, X, stars, no weekly downloads, so Payload, according to this, doesn't even really exist, and that's the old logo anyway. So I thought this was funny, but it did spur some good conversation about, well, which CMS then really does make sense, or how can I really compare the two? So we're going to do that with the actual version of the comparison page. I'll be watching the chat if you have questions about how excuse me, Payload CMS works versus Strapi. I've used Strapi a little bit. I have not used it as much as I've used Payload CMS. So I have more information there than I would on Strapi, but ideally, as we go through, I'll be able to actually spin up a Strapi project as well and compare the two in my own experience. So without further ado, why don't we look at the actual comparison page without all of the X's for Payload CMS. So the first thing here, I'm going to assume that everything about Strapi that Strapi wrote about itself is accurate and true. So that's my little bit of fact checking there. For all the Payload CMS stuff, I have my own experience, the website, the community, and everything to talk about the left column here, which is Payload CMS. So the starting price for Payload CMS, this is the old cloud pricing. Payload CMS Cloud doesn't exist anymore. The only way to spin up a new Payload CMS project is to self-host it, or to host it on Vercel or Railway or anywhere else. There is no more cloud offering for now from Payload CMS, and that's been since the Figma acquisition, so that's kind of old news at this point. That's about 6 months ago, so this needs to be updated. There is no $35 per month plan for Payload CMS. The Strapi price, I guess that's easy to verify. I could have pulled this up too. If we go to our pricing here on Strapi, there is a community version, there's the growth version. Is this annual? No, cloud, here we go. So, yearly. What is this saying? So, $99 per month is the starting price. That seems to be false as well, so maybe I shouldn't treat this as fact-checked as I thought. So, it seems like the cloud monthly price is actually $90 per month, not $99. And yearly, it's even cheaper at $75. So Strapi did a really bad job updating this overall. So architecture, code first, TypeScript focus. That's true. Good job. Payload CMS is code first. It's TypeScript focused. It's a very type safe project. And then Strapi says it's admin panel first with developer flexibility. From my limited experience with Strapi, that's true. The admin panel spins up, you're able to configure a few things. You're also able to change the code a little bit as well. So I'll say that that's true. Here, completely false. So Payload CMS as a GraphQL-centric platform, completely wrong. So the local API is a wrapper for the REST API. GraphQL is there for convenience, but I would say that Payload CMS's approach is more REST API versus GraphQL-centric. So that is incorrect. This would seem to be more correct for Payload CMS as well. So REST API is primary, GraphQL is available, but the Payload CMS team wrapped the REST API with the local API for performance. So database support, also completely false. So here, MySQL and MariaDB, not supported by Payload CMS. So that is wrong. And what's missing here is MongoDB. Payload didn't start supporting Postgres and SQLite, SQLite, whatever it is, before. So they had MongoDB when they started, and then they started to support Postgres and SQLite based on feedback from the users. MySQL, MariaDB, not supported. I have to assume that this is correct. Database support is all of these. So we'll go for that. Best for, so Payload CMS, they say, is best for developer-heavy teams preferring programmatic control. Mostly true. I do think that the interface of the admin panel is still pretty user-friendly. There are a few UX and UI things that are being adjusted, especially after the acquisition of Figma, or acquisition by Figma. There's a lot more focus on the actual design of the admin UI, but there is full control and programmatic control for developers as well. So that means more than the users actually using it. So then, best for balanced teams needing content creator autonomy. I would say that that is likely true, just because I know that the role-based access control is a bit more user-oriented than developer-focused. So anytime you need a new schema or a new configuration, the developer team has to do it for Payload CMS. Whereas for Strapi, in my limited experience, the user is able, the end user, the editor, is able to do a bit more than they could with Payload CMS. So that's the at a glance. We can see that they struck out pretty bad with Payload CMS. So, and at the bottom, I'm going to skip ahead here for a second. They write, that's comparisons. Where is it? Okay. Oh, here it is. So they write that the data on this page is updated regularly. That seems to be false. Don't hesitate to contact us if you notice a mistake. I may, because there's quite a few, but I don't think they care that much. So now let's get back to it. So that's the at a glance. Payload CMS. Excuse me. All right, so code first, headless CMS, built with TypeScript, true. Development teams define content models, true. Through code rather than visual interfaces, that's true for the development side. Full programmatic control over collections, fields, and validations. All of that's true. Does not start at $35 per month. It is actually focused to be free and open source with enterprise features, which you can design yourself. Anyway, it works for teams that prefer TypeScript config over admin panel workflows. All true. So here is an interesting distinction that they make. Payload CMS is a code first, headless CMS, and then it says Strapi is an open source headless CMS. Both are open source, both are free. Well, at least Strapi has a free community. Why would Figma purchase Payload CMS? Great question. So, all hypothesis, I have no actual idea. I have no insight into the actual acquisition. My thought is Payload CMS is designed to be super... I don't think it was built this way, but as it is now, it's a very easy way for AI to pick up on schema, because it's all TypeScript, so it's all strongly typed. AI can read it and know exactly what it's doing. Figma is going all in on AI, between Figma Make and all of the new features coming out for all of their design products. So, what better to compete with V0 or any other competing AI generation tool for websites than to pick up a TypeScript-based CMS that can then be attached to an AI-generated website and have full functionality with a CMS included. So Figma, I think, is going to figure out ways to add Payload CMS into their Make product or into their other generative AI products as well, to just produce fully functional websites with an AI prompt. So all of that is speculation. I have no insight, but that's just kind of how I would see it. It's a design company. Yes, it's a web design company even more. And beyond that, they're starting to work on their AI tools. So that makes sense to me. Get the one tool that is TypeScript code-based, all of that, feed it into AI, which can read it because it's very structured, and then output fully functioning prototypes based on a CMS built with TypeScript and just with TypeScript and JavaScript, and have working prototypes right in Figma Make. That's all I can speculate on. Let's move on here. So both are open source, both are free. There is a visual admin panel for both. So content teams for Payload CMS and for Strapi use the visual admin panel to manage content, while developers customize controllers. Sounds very similar to Payload CMS. And they can extend REST and GraphQL endpoints, same as Payload CMS, and build plugins. Supporting Postgres, MySQL, SQLite, MariaDB, and MongoDB. So all of this, at least for the most part, role-based access control, you can include that. Audit logging, you can include that in SOC 2 compliance. That's not out of the box with Payload CMS, but something you can configure. Again, their pricing is actually $90 per month or $75 if you purchase for the year, or free self-hosted, which is true for Payload CMS as well, which they conveniently left off. It works for teams needing both visual content management and code level customization. I think that's true also for Payload CMS. So here we have architecture and hosting. So development philosophy, TypeScript first, yes. Admin panel first, we talked about this. API architecture, we talked about this too. There is GraphQL capabilities, but it's REST API primary, just like it writes for Strapi here. Database support, incorrect, we talked about this. Postgres, SQLite, not these, MongoDB. And then Strapi has their list here. Deployment options, this is true, and this is also true. I've not heard of Weavy AI, but I can real quick. Artistic intelligence. Oh, I did hear about this actually. Yes, I have no real thoughts on this yet. Mostly because I'm just not quite informed enough. I did see this come out though. So let me think about that. I may come back to it. It does look cool. I am curious about the AI generated video part of things though. I don't know how I feel about it. Anyway, I'll form some actual thoughts there. Anyway, so deployment options. There is no cloud right now. I mentioned that earlier. With Figma's acquisition, the Payload team closed cloud. There are still cloud accounts going and there is still support for it, but there are no new entries into that product. Customization model, yes, programmatic control through code definitions. I think what this is saying is that the visual admin panel also generates schema for you, so it's not all code. Like with Payload CMS, you do define everything in code, and then it shows up in a visual interface. With Strapi, it seems that you have that code level customization that Payload CMS offers, but then there's also the admin side of things. Developer experience, this is the most important to me. This is why Payload CMS exists, is the developer experience. That said, it is still growing in maturity, so there are going to be updates to the developer experience as well, especially as they grow in popularity and in breadth of who they can reach. Primary language, these should be the same. So Payload CMS is TypeScript first, JavaScript. You can use, well, for the admin panel, you can only use TypeScript, but JavaScript is everywhere. I would also say that React is the primary, TypeScript and React. Same here. I don't actually know if Strapi uses React. Again, we don't have to talk about this. Yes, GraphQL gets generated, but it's REST API primary. Same here. GraphQL does come by default with Payload CMS. I have not tried. You can deactivate it in the code, like programmatically, you can take it out. But I think that the files still get generated, and the files I think are still necessary. Either way, REST API primary. I hopefully don't have to say that too many more times. Code first local API and development tools. That's true. Admin panel for rapid prototyping and testing. I don't actually know really what that means, because you also get an admin panel here. So I'm hoping to dig in a little bit more in the visual side of this and not just the conceptual theoretical side. React and modern JavaScript frameworks, that's true. I don't know why they didn't call it out like this though. React, next.js, you can use Vue. From what I understand, I just did a stream last week on Astro. So the actual Payload CMS admin UI itself is built with React, next.js, and TypeScript, but you can use whatever framework you want on the front end. I actually want to do a video of me using Payload CMS with Python. So I want to use Flask to communicate with the Payload CMS API. We'll see when I can get to that, but it feels a little unhinged, even though it's like completely normal to communicate and consume an API with Flask. Then there's the plugin architecture. Okay, so I will say there are official Payload CMS plugins, and then there's community plugins, and it's hit or miss. Like, all the official plugins are fully supported and well maintained. It's hit or miss if the community plugins are. So that said, there's a handful of Payload CMS official plugins, and those are very strong. But they are missing quite a few what people would consider essential plugins. Not that I can name any off the top of my head. And there's no true like marketplace for community plugins either. So I don't know exactly what Strapi's plugin model looks like, but they do have a visual plugin marketplace with extension, which is something I think that the Payload CMS can grow in, is having stronger centralized resources. And what that looks like, I don't know, but I think that'll start to be defined as it grows in maturity. User friendliness for content teams. So I am both a web developer and a marketer. That means I both create and consume a CMS. So I do have a little bit of not biased opinions here as well. So for the content interface, it's code-defined content models with admin interface. Very true. Visual content type builders with intuitive admin panel. I don't know why they had to add an intuitive here, because Payload CMS is intuitive as well. I don't think that actually added anything. Again, I don't understand what they're trying to say here. So it says Payload CMS has a developer-designed forms with custom validation. Kind of true. So to define the form, though, you're not like creating a form from scratch. You're just developing, or you're defining the schema, and then Payload CMS turns that into a form for you. So when you, the developer, are creating these forms, you just define the schema. Everything else is done for you. But then it goes a different direction here with a WYSIWYG editor and media management. All of that's true also for Payload CMS. They use lexical rich text, and they have built-in, like out-of-the-box media management. So not exactly sure what they are going for here, but you do get custom validation as well, and you can define the schema however you want. Workflow management. I think I know what this means. Things like approvals. but I don't get what they're saying here. So you can do, Strapi comes with RBAC out of the box, RBAC. So that's the built-in roles part. I want to see if that's part of the community version though, because if I look here at the CMS, okay, so you do custom roles and permissions available for free, no limitations starting from, okay, so this is new. That role-based access control comes out of the box. Now here, this is the thing that I don't really like 3 seats. Like, why are you charging for seats? Anyway, back to this. Oof. All right, so workflow management. So they have built-in roles, yes, and permissions, and then workflow tools. I hope to actually dig in and figure out what they're trying to say here. So for me, workflows interprets as a way to, like, somebody starts writing content, it gets approved, it gets edited, and then it's submitted for publishing after that. Learning curve. I can't speak to the learning curve here. Well, for editors, I can. There's almost no learning curve. Going in and knowing how to... Yes, okay, sorry. Distracted. I do want to look, that's why I want to look into Strapi here, because if it says that there are seats, but you can you can create as many accounts as you want in the admin panel, then this needs to change, because I guess maybe it's the admin user can log into your... Yeah, so I want to look into this and figure that out, because first of all, I know it's a SaaS model, but I never really understood charging for seat. Charging for usage makes way more sense, and then charging for... It's hard, because if you charge, like if you bring your own database, you own... Oh, there's no MongoDB here. So Strapi doesn't support MongoDB. Don't know why they wrote that they did. But yeah, charging for... If you bring your own database, you own the data, so they can't charge you for the data either, or the usage of that data. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Maybe for the community version, there is no seat limit, but as soon as you buy for growth to get the API tools in the live preview, I'm glad that I saw that here. That's something that we're going to have to talk about. Okay, we'll come back to it. All right, so then learning curve. CMSs are CMSs. There's only so much that can really differ between them. So not much of a learning curve, at least for the editor. For Payload CMS, for the developer, there is a bit of a learning curve. And then same thing would be true for Strapi. Media handling, you can do custom storage. There's built-in local storage. You can also easily configure cloud storage. And with Cloudflare's R2, AWS CloudFront, it's very easy to create a CDN for your content as well. This is true of Payload CMS as well. Visual media library with drag and drop uploads. That comes out of the box. You don't programmatically define that. You just create your upload field and you're good to go. Whew. Take a quick water break here. All right. So we're now to integrations and extensibility. This is something where Payload CMS excels at, but you do have to know what you're doing to extend the Payload CMS UI. That is going to be something that's very developer focused, because you can't just like add plugins to your admin UI without defining it in code. So we have a code first plugin development and customization ecosystem. That's true. Visual plugin marketplace with 100 plus official plugins. That sounds true. Now I want to see, are plugins supported by default? Usage terms. So I'm going to assume so, because I only see plugin marketplace down as a link. So my guess is that this is true, and it's for the free and open source version as well. Custom API endpoints through programmatic control, that's true. And there are no, no, this is just integration, not plugins. There are no webhooks by default for Payload CMS. So that is something that you can configure. And I think there's a community plugin in development for that. But webhook support is not there for Payload CMS, but looks like it's there for Strapi. Third-party services. Yes, manual integration through code implementation, pre-built integrations for popular services. I don't know if this is true for Strapi, but yes, if you want to integrate into HubSpot or Salesforce or any other kind of enterprise product, you will need to build that integration yourself. That said, you can always make that into a plugin to use across all of your projects. So build once, reuse. Custom extensions, full TypeScript customization at every layer. Very true, but you need plugins from Strapi to extend the architecture, but there are some core customization. There are some core customizations that you can do as well with Strapi. So I was going to say something on this. What was it? Give me 1 second to think. Full TypeScript customization at every layer. Don't remember. Moving on. If I remember, I'll come back to it. For webhook support, already talked about it. You can customize your webhook implementation, but Strapi has it built in. That is something, again, that may be developed as a community plugin. I remember what I was going to say now. So the reason I'm a little down on Payload CMS plugins, not the official ones, the community ones, because Payload CMS is so young in its development journey. So compared to Strapi, which I think was 2016 when it came out, Payload CMS is, I think 6 years younger than that, maybe 5. No, sorry, maybe 7. Somewhere around there. So the community plugins are, like, you never know if they're going to continue being maintained. So like one plugin that comes up often is a bunch of different authentication plugins, which is great. It's nice to be able to extend our authentication options, but I don't want to rely on a plugin that may never get upgraded again. And if there's a breaking change to core that affects the plugin and that plugin's not maintained to fix that issue, then I just run into the same issue of trying to do it myself. So that's where plugins get a little weird for me with Payload CMS. So Strapi may actually win in the plugin ecosystem, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Hey there, and I assume coffee and salute means good morning. Good morning to you as well. I'm not used to streaming this early in the morning. I mean, I started at 9:30, so about 30 minutes ago, but I usually do it after work, but I'm taking some time off, so I get to treat this like it's my job. Come in here and grab some water. I don't have coffee right now. I wish I did, but when it's nice to be able to like do this and ease into it. I'm usually better in the morning, honestly, so I feel more coherent. I feel more awake. So hopefully it's coming across as bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. 5 p.m. Oh, so it's quitting time. Well, quitting time. It's never really quitting time. All right. Internationalization and localization. There is a lot of work being done with Payload CMS for localization and internationalization. So I imagine some of this is going to be outdated, but I will also say that next to plugins, localization is something that I hear more people complain about than not for Payload CMS. So again, a lot of work is being done. They've made a lot of progress for it. I don't do a lot of localization or internationalization in my projects, so I don't have a ton of experience in it, other than the video that I created setting up a localized project. So a lot of the edge cases I have not experienced, I have not looked into, but all of that context aside, here's how Strapi compares to Payload CMS with internationalization. Custom localization implementation through code, true. Developer implemented translation workflows, true. You can use AI. I think there's at least 1 or 2 community plugins that help translations with AI. But also if you're localizing, I guess for speed you could use AI, but if you're localizing, you typically will have somebody fluent, ideally, to translate your content for you. But I know that gets hairy. Locale management, locale configuration and routing programmatically, true. Translation workflows, isn't that the same thing here? Custom approval processes through code logic, true. And regional content, custom geo-targeting through API customization, also true. So for Strapi, I don't know if any of this is true. Built-in internationalization plugin. So that's different from localization. You'd figure that they would know that. But there is also built-in internationalization support for Payload CMS for at least the admin UI. Visual interface for managing translated content. There is also a visual interface for managing translated content with Payload CMS through their locales. See, I'm glad to see that because I haven't used Strapi a whole lot. I used it when I was shopping around for CMSs as I was starting to get more into I never really used WordPress for like custom projects, but so I looked at Keystone, I looked at Strapi, but I was using Flask at the time. So I started learning React and next.js, and then Payload CMS popped up right after Keystone. So love it as a tool. Really interested to what you're going to say to that question as well about Payload. I have my reasons, but I'm clearly very biased. All right, so there is visual interface for managing translated content on both, but we'll see if Strapi's is any better. We can see how much time I have. This is not, so if you're like watching the scroll bar, it's not nearly that long. Locale management, admin panel, locale switching and content versioning. That's true for Payload CMS as well. Role-based translation permissions can be configured for Payload CMS, but it's not something that's built in. And regional content, locale-based content delivery. I wonder how they do that without geo-targeting. So, and I wonder if that's for the cloud only. Let's see. So internationalization is built in, locales also unlimited. Okay, so good there. Let's see for the cloud though. So I am comparing the free and open source versions. But I do want to see here. So this is where they make their money then. Oh, it's serverless on the free version. Okay, interesting. Oh, you don't get cron jobs until the pro version up there. All right, so back to CMS. Is cron involved here? Yes. All right. More on cron in a minute. So interested to learn more about the locale here. Pricing and licensing. We talked about this already at the beginning of the call. I'll come back to chat here. Let me come back to chat real quick. Not all people are developers. I have a team as well, and I've used plugins. All right, so so for Payload, yes, the code first approach is a big deal to developers, but then at the same time, yes, not everyone is a developer. There is talks, at least right now, that the Payload CMS is working on more visual editing capabilities. Again, because of Figma's acquisition, they're able to free up resources to work on that. So a true visual editor inside to generate actual config to config as code isn't going anywhere with Payload, but the ability for non-developers to interact with Payload CMS is what's going to help them grow. So that is one thing that I think is coming. Now for visual editing, on the front end, currently that is an enterprise feature with Payload CMS, but it's something that you can make yourself. And in place of that, you can use the live preview tool to actually make your own live preview tool, both as a preview or a draft mode using next.js at least. I think you can use other frameworks, but then also within the admin UI, you can see as the product is being, or as the page is being built, a live preview of that page as well. So I've not used Storyblock. I've heard actually horror stories about Storyblock. And again, it sounds like you're getting hit by having a team of people who need access, and it's something that charges for seats. Again, never really understood charging for seats, but Payload CMS does not. And if you have at least one strong developer on your team that can configure your Payload CMS for you, it's worth checking out. Did I miss anything else here? Okay, perfect. So pricing and licensing, we've talked about it. Payload CMS does not currently have tiers. Their cloud is currently closed. It's still active. People still use it, but there are no new customers. These prices are wrong as well. The professional plan is, as we talked about, monthly. It's $90. Scale at $450. So they reduced their pricing recently. Even with yearly, it's even less. And this is for cloud. So that's comparing cloud to cloud, which does not exist. Enterprise, yes, there is custom pricing available. So enterprise is not closed. Only cloud is closed right now. Custom pricing with additional environments at $349 per month. One extra environment included. Okay, so that's telling me that if I want extra environments, so 2 for scale. Oh, so 1 extra. And then per environment, it's $300 per environment per month. So I assume that means that you can have production staging, all those different environments, development environments, for $350 or $300 per month for the yearly plan. Okay, that's good to know because this pricing doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If I look back at CMS, and I'm answering or talking about the doesn't block from creating more admin users, here it implies that, well, I guess you can have as many admin users as you want as long as you don't upgrade, because if you upgrade to get live preview or Strapi AI, then you're going to get hit with $15 per month per seat. So if you put 10 users in here on free and you're like, well, crap, I need live preview, you're now getting charged $150 per month per seat. So that's kind of a bummer. But, and then SSO is added, so it's an add-on. I wonder if you can add it on to the free version as well. SSO is an enterprise feature with Payload CMS, but it is something that you can implement yourself, which I need to do. Okay, self-hosted option, free open source version. Now here is a key distinction that I want to highlight. So self-hosted option for Payload CMS is an unrestricted, free, full version of Payload CMS. Here you see free version with core functionality. So these are the things that just make a CMS a CMS. If you don't need anything more than that, great. But if you want some customization, extensibility, it seems like anything beyond the core functionality based on Strapi's own website, you're going to start getting charged for, even on the self-hosted option. So once you, like we were talking about in the chat here, as soon as you get to license and contracts, that's when you start getting charged as well. Cost scaling does not apply here, and I think that this is going to be different with the pricing and on the actual pricing page. All right, for security and compliance, all of it is custom for Payload CMS. I don't really need to talk about that. We've talked about, so authentication is enterprise grade out of the box, but if you want to extend it, you have to do it. The compliance standards, if you want it, you've got to do it. Access control, role-based access control you have to configure, but access controls are programmatically set. Security features, anything that you want to do as a developer, you can do, as well as auditing and logs. All of that custom implementation. But Strapi apparently has built-in role-based access control. Then SOC 2 and GDPR compliance features. I wonder if that's included with the free version. So SOC 2 report comes at enterprise. Let's see if compliance and security is here as well. Okay, yep. So GDPR and SOC 2 compliance across the board. All right, visual roles and permission management. That is something that's missing from Payload CMS unless you implement it yourself. Again, I think there's a couple of community plugins that are working on this. Zero trust security architecture, and then built-in audit trails and compliance reporting. I don't know if that's true, though, for the free and self-hosted version, because at the enterprise level is where we start to see the SOC 2 report. So I don't see anything else compliance reporting below the enterprise feature. If I go to cloud, I think this is all charged for usage and for seats. Usage, compliance, free, okay. Okay, so fine. So for ease of use, probably Strapi would come in for security and compliance, but you can build everything in Payload CMS. Performance and scalability, manual configuration for payload. That is kind of the selling point of Payload CMS, is that you get to control all of this. Now, that said, there are some built-in, not with Payload CMS, but in the tools that Payload CMS uses and that you use, that optimizes this for you and optimizes it in such a way that you want. So custom caching and optimization through code, that's through things like server actions, through hooks from Payload CMS, through revalidation with next.js, and then of course wherever you're hosting your platform, whether it's serverless or server full, you're able to optimize that however you want. With Strapi, it says built-in performance optimizations and caching. I'm not exactly sure how they're going to do that with a self-hosted version without also having, I assume that they have like a next.js package or an Astro package or something like that to help with it. Scalability, yes, it's manual. Also depends on infrastructure, which I think is true across the board. And then it brings up cloud here, where it auto scales and manages your infrastructure. That's going to be true of any cloud offering, whether you deploy through Strapi Cloud or through DigitalOcean or through Vercel or anything like that. Database performance, custom query optimization and indexing. That's true, but very easy to do. And then built-in query optimization with database flexibility. Not sure what that means. CDN, super easy to set up through CloudFront or through Cloudflare's R2. And then there's a built-in CDN integration with Strapi Cloud. I wonder, can I do a CDN though through the free and open source version? I imagine so, depending on if I can programmatically set the media library. Okay. I can't tell from here, but there's no built-in CDN, but there isn't for Payload's brain. There isn't for Payload's free and open source version either. You have to do it. Monitoring tools, yes, you have to implement them as a custom tool. And I'm curious what the performance monitoring and analytics in Strapi looks like. Okay, good to know. So to answer the question in the video, for the CDN integration, you can do the same thing that I just mentioned for Payload CMS. You are able to use your own CDN provider for the free and open source version. It's not just in the cloud. Again, I don't know why they didn't call that out if they're comparing free and open source to free and open source. All right, community and ecosystem. So growing developer-focused community, true, large, established open source community. I mean, yes. but so is Payload CMS. Again, they keep calling out open source only in Strapi, but we have Payload CMS, which is open source as well. And it is developer focused. So if you go into the Payload CMS Discord channel, you're going to find developers. I don't know about the Strapi community, but I imagine some of them, at least, many of them, are likely developers. Code first documentation and TypeScript examples. That's the whole thing about Payload, is that it's defined and created through the config file. So yes, that makes sense that the documentation would be code first. And then comprehensive documentation with visual guides. That's helpful. Let's see. Can I look up? Where's the document? Oh, I have the documentation, don't I? We'll see here in a second. All right, resources, Strapi CMS docs. So we will come back to this because I do think we'll have time to start a project and see what this looks like compared to a Payload CMS project. So, documentation quality. One last note on that. Payload CMS does have a big initiative on increasing the quality of their documentation. I like to think that my videos are a good extension of their documentation as well. Some of my videos are hosted on their website as well. So if you're learning Payload CMS and you're not quite getting it from the documentation, my videos will help with that. But that said, it seems that Strapi has visual guides with screenshots, which, yeah, that's going to be helpful in learning how to actually use this. All right. Learning resources, developer-focused tutorials and code examples, and my videos. Extensive tutorials, courses, and community content. I wouldn't say extensive tutorials because there's maybe me and 3 others in this space right now. Maybe a couple more. There are no courses that I'm aware of outside of free YouTube playlists, and then community content. That's true for Payload CMS as well. Ooh. Developer-focused tutorial. Support options, community support, and enterprise assistance. I'll say that that's true. The Payload CMS Discord channel is the best place to get support, but there are no official support channels other than for enterprise accounts and for the remaining cloud accounts. Community forums, there's not a ton of those. Official support, there's not much of that, and enterprise help we talked about. Active but smaller contributor base, large contributor base with frequent updates. I wanted to check that out. So yes, it is active development for Payload CMS, which is great. Smaller contributor base, don't really know what that means, but they call out here frequent updates. So I thought I'd look. Releases, their last release was last week, and then before that was 2 weeks ago. Before that, 3 weeks, so cool, yep. And then the 20th, this was a hotfix. So November 19th, 12th. Okay, so it's mostly a weekly cadence with a few misses here and there. Compare that to Payload CMS, which I won't even pull up because I also know is weekly, at least a weekly cadence as well. So it doesn't really matter how many people contribute, but the frequent updates is true for both. So now it talks about the bottom line, when you should choose which. And that you choose Payload CMS when you need code-first development. I'll say that that's true. If you want and need that control, Payload CMS is the way to go. You will not find another CMS that I can find that gives you that kind of control and flexibility. So when I started looking for a CMS and landed on Payload CMS, I mentioned earlier I looked at Keystone. Keystone forces you to use GraphQL in interacting with your API. I didn't want to use GraphQL, so having the ability to use REST, to use GraphQL, and then to use Payload's local API It just doesn't get better than that. There are no costs for Payload CMS, so we can skip that. Programmatic control over every aspect, mentioned that. Development teams comfortable with implementing custom solutions. I mentioned that in the chat as well. If you have a strong developer, Payload CMS just makes sense. They actually may love it. This is false. It's REST API centric, GraphQL available, and then minimal reliance on visual admin interfaces. Only true for the configuration side of things. Beyond the initial configuration, everything is done in the admin UI. So choose Strapi then. MongoDB support for no SQL data requirements. According to, I lost my pricing. No. According to the pricing page, that is not true. You can use Postgres, MySQL, and MariaDB. And the cloud is its own, it seems, database that is hosted and provided for you. So if you want to use MongoDB, you'll actually want to use Payload CMS, not Strapi. There is balance between flexibility for the developers and content team autonomy. I want to see that for myself, so we'll take a look here in a few minutes. Comprehensive admin panel for non-technical content creators. I'll see what that means again in a minute. SOC 2 and GDPR out of the box. That's actually pretty impressive. So I don't know how robust that is. I did see the reporting is in the enterprise tier of the free and open source, of the open source version. But having that built in is helpful for essentially anyone who needs it. So think like those who serve banks and those who serve financial institutions, those who serve privacy-centric government agencies, things like that. Extensive plugin marketplace. I will say that if they do really have 100 plus official plugins, they beat Payload CMS in that. Built-in performance monitoring and auto-scaling via Strapi Cloud. Oh, auto-scaling via Strapi Cloud. We'll see what the performance monitoring actually looks like, but the auto-scaling through the cloud doesn't really apply to free and open source anyway. That's up to you and your infrastructure. And then larger community, Strapi is technically more popular, so more people do use it, and the community is likely larger. So I'm not going to read this because this is the marketing stuff for why Strapi wins here. Actually, I do, because all of this is the same. So you own the code. You own it for both Payload CMS and for Strapi. Customization extends to every layer. That's true for both Payload and Strapi. Hosting flexibility aligns with compliance requirements, both true for Payload and Strapi. Total cost of ownership remains predictable, true for Payload and for Strapi. So how Strapi wins, it compares one-to-one, apples to apples to Payload CMS. Perfect. Now, the frequently asked questions is riddled with falsifications. Strapi provides broader database support, including MongoDB for no SQL requirements. We have seen from the pricing page that that's false. Payload CMS focuses exclusively on relational databases. Again, false. Postgres, SQLite, yes, and then MongoDB. So again, I'm looking at the pricing page here of the databases that are supported. This doesn't matter to some people who do prefer relational databases, but if you want to use a relational database, Strapi has the support you need. But if you want to use Mongo, you need to use Payload CMS if you're going to bring your own database. And again, when I load up Strapi here, we'll see if that's actually true or not. Pricing models compare. We've talked about pricing extensively. Provides better content team experiences, excels with a comprehensive admin panel designed for non-technical users. It's probably true. Visual content types builder. Okay, yep, so Strapi does have that. And then Payload CMS requires more developer involvement, and that's true. Anytime the content model changes, developers do need to get involved. Architectural differences, this is incorrect. Payload emphasizes code first, true. TypeScript, true. GraphQL capabilities, true, but REST API primary. Strapi balances visual admin tools with developer customization through REST APIs. Sure. And then self-hosted options, there's not a whole lot here that's wrong. None of this is wrong. They're both free self-hosted versions. Perfect. So a bunch of different comparisons here. But the last thing to look at is other easily verifiable information. So Strapi on the left, Payload on the right. This is where this joke document came from that I saw on the Discord. Apparently some locales or countries can't display this information, but I can find it here in the States. So let's go back. Excuse me. So company size, 75, sure. I don't think this really matters, honestly. But stars. So we see 60K versus 18K. Let's take a look because that's going to be dated for both of them, I'm sure. So for Strapi, 71K stars, we'll say. Then we can go to GitHub. Payload CMS. Go to Payload. 40K stars. So still fewer stars on GitHub, but almost twice that. Yep, about 40K stars. So over twice this. Weekly downloads from NPM. So let's go to npmjs.com and we can look up Payload CMS. Or maybe we should just look up Payload. Weekly downloads, 187K. More than the 30K written here. And then for Strapi, I assume it's going to be admin, which is going to be core, 136K. So without combining all the different packages and trying to figure out that math, it seems that Payload has overtaken Strapi with the NPM weekly downloads. Funding, don't really care. Country of origin, don't really care. For developer experience, PaaS and self-hosted, not so much true for Payload CMS anymore. Open source, true for both. This is where things get wonky. There are API tokens with Payload CMS, but you have to configure it yourself. Design system, there is an undocumented design system. Let me make sure that I'm thinking about this right. Yeah, so you can use the Payload CMS UI, but it's not well documented. So that design system does exist, but it's not easy to find or use. Both do have GraphQL, both do have documentation, both allow for authentication and permissions. Here they finally get it right for the most part. These are the databases available for Strapi. Notice it does not include Mongo. And then this does include Mongo, Postgres. And then of course it's missing SQLite. Single types, don't really know what that means. Custom fields, both are true. You can also use UI fields, but you can also just create your own custom fields. Webhooks apparently are supported with Payload CMS. I have not implemented them. Codebase is exactly the same. API Playground, there is a GraphQL Playground, but there is not for REST API. Customizable API, JWT or JOT authentication. Content modeling, yes. Plugins, yes. These, well, this is brand new. Payload does have an SDK now, so you can use the Payload SDK in mono repos. And it's typed, so you don't have to worry too much about not being type safe, so you're able to use that. And then there are cron jobs as well, but again, you have to configure those yourself. Previews, now here's an interesting thing. Yes, you do have to set up previews manually, but it says that this is included, but it's included at the $45 a month growth plan. So the live preview here is only included in a paid version. Scheduling, you can set up scheduling with Payload CMS. And yes, you get a media and library and draft and publish with Payload as well. I don't really know what releases means. I assume it's you can control the releases of your content programmatically, like with GitHub or something like that. Review workflows, customized, versioning, spelled wrong, but you do get versioning out of the box, internationalization out of the box. Marketplace, no. Real-time editing, I don't know what that means either, because you can do the live preview and that's real-time editing. And if you set up your caching right, it automatically updates with you. And then visual editing, you can use Vercel visual editing, but you can also set up your own visual editing as well. SSO, audit logs, role-based access control, all included, but you do have to configure them. So is this page really regularly updated? I don't know. Are there mistakes? A ton. And not just for, so I'm surprised that it was not just Payload CMS that had the mistakes. The mistakes were both for Payload CMS and for Strapi. So I thought that was interesting, going through line by line here. You could figure out and compare pricing from what Strapi says on their pricing page to what they're talking about here. That's all of the stuff that Strapi says about Payload CMS and themselves. So I do want to try this out. I don't want to just talk poorly about Strapi and not know everything to know about it. Like, I'm not going to start doing tutorial videos on it, but I know Payload CMS pretty intimately. Like, I know Payload CMS and how to use it, how to configure it, and how it all works. But I don't have a lot of information about how Strapi works. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a project real quick. So I'm going to change my directory. And we're going to do some code. Yeah, this is fine. And then we're going to make a directory and just call it test Strapi. So, all right, we're in our Strapi directory now. Quick start guide. Do I have to create a Strapi cloud account? Because I don't really want to do that. So let's copy this, and we're going to do P and P. Oh. No. Weird. There we go. P and PX. All right, so welcome to Strapi, ready to bring your project to life. Okay, so I can skip that. So it tries to get you onto the growth plan. Ooh, so single sign-on is for growth only, and I assume it's an add-on to growth only. So interesting. Content history and releases. So again, they talk about releases, and it seemed like they're comparing the free and open source to the free and open source. But it seems that that releases, content history, all of that is included in a paid plan, not in a free version. All of that is included in a free version of Payload CMS. So very interesting. Also interesting with multi-tenant. Let's take a look. I'm going to skip this real quick. Do you want to use a default database SQLite? Can I use? So I get MySQL, Postgres, and SQLite. So I'll just use SQLite. Use the file name, start with an example, structure and data, yes. Because I want to look. Yes, definitely TypeScript. Yes. Yes. No. All right. So let's see multi-tenant. Because I see your question. If I could spell multi... Don't see... I see multi-site. I don't see multi-tenant. And this is a plugin. Well, so the multi-tenant plugin is a plugin for Payload CMS as well. So interesting. So I don't see, I think you're right, there's no multi-tenant plugin, but there are plugins for Cloudinary, so that's interesting. Resend and SIDGrid, I saw it. Can email designer, so there are some good things. Sitemap plugin. SEO, okay, so we'll come back to this. We're just quick starting here. All right, so now, command failed. Failed to seed your database. Okay, that's fine. So now I can cd. Oh, I never changed my. All right, pnpm run develop. So let's take a look at what Strapi looks like just right out of the box without anything added. Try again, debug for more. Okay, maybe the try again with debug for more information. Okay, so pnpm run develop debug. All right, so let's just open the project with WebStorm and see if that helps me. So right quick, I'm going to open this first and then I will use yarn instead. Yarn run develop. Oh, I should install first. I'm used to using pnpm for everything with Payload CMS. So either way, I do need to upload this or open this. So open new window, trust. I should probably close my other WebStorm windows. Here's the project terminal. Close all these before my computer explodes. All right. So now that should be good. Let's do 1920 by 1080. Yarn run develop. All right. So we get to our local host. I have to create an account for my project. So, oh, I have to actually use a real password here. This is not going to leave my local host, so I'm just going to suggest a new password. I don't want that. Let's start. Okay. So first thing I want to look at is there's deploy. I can deploy from here, whether through the CLI or through cloud. So interesting. Oh, so the deployment is just for cloud there. Zoomed out. There we go. Zoomed in. I can look at my account. Settings. Okay. Just getting used to this. Customization. So you can choose the logo. So that is something that you can do in Payload CMS. I have a video on it, but this is just right out of the box. I'm able to just change it immediately for the logo. So the menu logo and then the auth logo, which is, I did not save this password, so that would be a mistake. Let's create another user real quick. Users. Invite new user. I'm going to do we will make them a super admin, invite user, finish. So just in case I get locked out, because that password did not save. Oh, the short answer, to sum up an hour and 15 minutes of recording, I mean, Payload CMS is my favorite. I'm just digging into Strapi now. So yes, I love Payload CMS. I love everything that it does. The code first, config based, all of that stuff just makes sense to me. That said, I know Strapi is super popular. I get asked about it all the time. Why choose Payload over Strapi or Sanity or any of those? So that's what I'm really digging into. It's really hard to summarize everything because there are some things where Payload CMS is stronger, which I think is the content modeling, flexibility, extensibility, and a few other things. And then there are things that Strapi is just going to do better just based on product maturity, which is going to be things like plugins, localization, etc. Oh, I can't change my password. Thank you. Can I do that here? Oh, I should do actually. This is not a very secure password, but you know, no one's going to do this. All right, perfect. Active, true, great. So we have a new user, API tokens. Oh, now it asks me to save my password. Skip. All right, default. So just API token access, classic. So content history, right now I just want to see like what is paywalled. So content history is one of them. This is something that's built into Payload CMS. You don't have to configure, well, you have to configure versions, but you just hit versions true and it starts tracking for you. And yes, you can track across locales as well. You can revert changes in one click and you can browse the whole content history. So while that is listed as a perk of Strapi, I'll say it right one time. This is something that's built into Payload CMS. It's not something that you have to pay for. Releases, group content, and publish updates together. Interesting. So this is like bulk publishing. You can set this up using a workflow if you wanted to within Payload CMS. Not something you have to pay for. And I can see how this would be helpful during like holiday posts and things like that, or like changes across the board that all need to happen at once. So you can either schedule them all at once or do a batch schedule here. Review workflows. So this is, again, something that you can customize in Payload CMS, but these, if you pay, it's able to, you can customize review stages, permissions, and use webhooks to initiate workflow processes. That's not something that's easily done in Payload CMS, but you do have to pay for it here in Strapi. And then single sign-on is paywalled as well. Again, single sign-on is technically an enterprise feature for Payload CMS, but it is something that you're able to configure without that. All right, so internationalization, you can add new locales super easily, it looks, based on all of these locales, which looks very robust. So the advanced setting, you can, I don't know why this is an advanced setting, why it's not just here, but then set a different locale. I don't know any other languages, so I'm going to leave that. Media library, it seems like there's only one. So with Payload CMS, you can have multiple media upload configuration, multiple media collections, which allow you to organize your files a little bit differently. I can't tell if that's something that can be done here, but as it seems that this just seems to be a configuration for the media library. Transfer tokens, webhooks, roles, so we can have and add new roles. We have users. Test the settings for the email plugin. Okay, so it automatically added users and permissions plugin for me. Providers, email. Interesting. So if I wanted to add just Facebook. Okay. So I like that, actually. It's way easier to add multiple ways to authenticate with Strapi than it is with Payload CMS. So I do really like this a lot, where I'm able to, like, I could come in and configure Google authentication just by setting this up and then enable it. Same with GitHub. There are not, as far as I can tell, the OAuth providers, and that's going to be because of the single sign-on attribute. So like Okta and probably some others that I can't think of. But it is nice that that's super easy to set up. Discord, Cognito. So very good. Email templates, advanced settings. Okay, so the marketplace, this is all the plugins with the providers. So yep, CloudFront you can use, as was mentioned earlier in the chat, you can just use a plugin for your S3 or provide your own. Cloudflare R2 with public URL. Oh, Cloudflare R2 and CDN, which is my preferred CDN. But then you have Cloudinary, excuse me, email resend, and more. And these seem to be official, or at least most of them appear to be official. I wonder if there's a way to actually tell which ones are. Category made by Strapi. Well, there's 4 made by Strapi. So 161 by the community, so that makes me a little nervous. And then verified makes me a little bit less nervous. So there are a few things here for you to look at. Deploy, we already looked at. Content type builder, let's skip that. Media library, so yes, it looks like you get 1 media library. Is there a way to expand the sidebar? It's hard to... Anyway, content manager. So we have an about page. Okay. I need some water. So what we can do, first I want to look at here. We have the Strapi updater. Now, what we get is the Strapi project. And I think this is going to update with... Before I do that, let's take a look back at Strapi. Let's create a type builder about global single types. Okay, so this would be like an about page. We've got our collection types, which would be article. Okay, so that's gonna be like a blog. Perfect. So let's work with this content manager. We're gonna use the defaults that come out of the box. We're going to create a new article, create a new entry. Test article, generate from test. Description, this is a test article to see how things render. Let's drag and drop the thumbnail. Well, that didn't work. Stay on page, add new asset. Now I can drag and drop, okay. So I can upload this, finish, author, create a relationship. I don't want to create an avatar, no relations available, save. Okay, so now can add me, category, v-test. So the slug field is added, well, it was added automatically for me. So now I've got a test category. So then if I want to add a component, okay, so then I can use rich text. This is some rich text. It's the body of my article. All right, so, oh, is this, I can't use keyboard shortcuts here, or at least not by default. Oh, it's Markdown. Okay. And then preview mode. Now can I do... Wow, interesting. Okay. So rich text there. Cool. I can hit publish. And now if I go over to my Strapi, I can see my database. I think. So types, source, components, extensions, API, article. Okay, admin. Nope. Index. Okay. I would like to see... So I think this saves in a database. I cannot find my database. Oh, it's temporary. Data uploads. So this data... Okay. Config, so I can update some stuff. So, all right, so let's look back at the documentation real quick. Well, hold on, public, uploads. Okay, so I see a bunch of different sorry, my brain broke here. All these different sizes for the upload that I just did. Then if I look in my database, download missing driver, apply. So I should be able to, got it. View in my database. I should have articles. And then I see a test article. I see 2 test articles, one published and one unpublished. Can I refresh this? So I see 2 test articles. One is published. So now the reason I'm looking for this is because now I need to query data on the front end. Yeah, the reason I couldn't find the database is I just saw that this is ignored in my git ignore, which makes sense, but it's there locally. Either way, we have it now. I can get rid of my data JSON here. Oh, seeding data. Okay, thank you. See, I'm glad you're here. Super helpful. All right. So what I know is that, oh, this is the design system. I can get rid of all of this because what I'm going to need to do is get this showing on the front end. So I've got all of this deployed. I don't want to deploy to Strapi Cloud. Don't want to do that. So I've got the admin UI, great. So what I'm going to have to do, it seems, is create a new project and then use that to communicate with the API. If I look here, and then I go to my API tokens, I can see my full access across the site. We can control, cool, I can see all of that. View token, I am able to see the API token. Again, this is not going to be deployed. I am not worried if you guys copy this and try to use it because it won't do anything. So what needs to happen then? So I've created that. What to do next? Okay, I know how to use an API, but is there a API restaurants? Okay. Oh, here we go. Here you go. Strapi client. That's what I'm looking for. So I can use, I assume, any JavaScript framework to do this. So let's do that. But that means I'm going to have to, I don't need a template. I'm going to go and just create a new project. Which this is one thing that I think Payload does excel at. So Strapi, you have to have your, like you have to have this as a headless CMS essentially. So you, with both front end and back end, I assume it's a mono repo then. So I could set up a mono repo, have the back end be one place or be the Strapi project, and then have the front end be, I'll just use next.js because that's what I know. So I can do npx create next app. Strapi test. Yes. And then I'm going to install the Strapi client with pnpm because that's what I know. Because all this is doing is creating the API for me to communicate with. So yes, I'm setting up the configuration in kind of a more of a block format, or like a drag and drop kind of traditional CMS format. But now I need to first change directory to my Strapi test, and then run pnpm add Strapi client. And while this is running, this is going to hurt my computer. I am 100% certain of that. I'm going to open a new project. Oops, that's wrong. You guys get a little look at how I organize things. Test Strapi, Strapi test. New window, trust project. And so now I can go to my app and I'll go to my page. I'm going to import, so I'm going to change this. Put this on the right half. Get my documentation on the left half. And then with TypeScript, we're going to import, ooh, this is gonna suck, Strapi. And so I do know that the reason my computer is starting to like spin up and consume some more RAM is not necessarily because of Strapi and Next. It's because I'm also running a streaming platform. So I will take all of this with a grain of salt. All right, so we will use the div, but I'll get rid of the main. And so I don't, well, I'll need the image here in a second. All right, so we will have a constant called client, and that's going to equal Strapi. I also just realized that I am trying to stream in 4K right now, which is definitely not helping my cause here. So base URL is going to be localhost 1337, very clever API. And then auth is going to be my API token, which again, you guys can see because it does not matter. Copy. Oof. Okay. So now we're authenticated. Now we get to fetch. So I will do all my articles equals await client.fetch articles. Method is get, which that needs to be an object as well. So I'm curious if this is going to be type safe. So export default async. Is there anything I can close? Does not appear that way. That's fine. All right, so we will have an async function for my home page. And then from here, I can just get, wait, so the fetch, oh, that's just general purpose fetch. Okay, so let's do find instead. So client collection, okay. We're learning here. So we'll do const articles, it's gonna be client collection articles, extended space, and then we're gonna do all articles. That's going to be await articles. Find. I will say that I don't have to deal with lag when I stream about Payload, just saying. Okay. So OBS is starting to give out on me because of everything that I'm trying to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try and log these articles before I get shut down. Because I don't think I can reduce the quality of my camera. Okay. So it is typed, which means I should be able to get, let's do const. All right, we'll see what happens when I start my next server here. I don't imagine anything good. Okay, I see my data here. So all articles. Okay. All right, let's see if I can get things back on track here. Okay, let's see if we are back on track yet. Okay, so Everything should be shut down now. All right, so part of this issue. Okay, nice. It says I have excellent connection again. But part of the issue is that I'm trying to stream in 4K, which is my mistake. I was supposed to be streaming in 1080p. So I will try this probably again soon to see how all of this does actually compare to Payload CMS. Mostly in the data fetching. I want to see if it's typed, which right now it does not seem to be, from what I can tell. So I need to investigate a little bit more. So Payload CMS is typed by default, and I like that a lot. Let's go ahead and exit out of this. Let's see if we can get this back on track. Oops. So that wasn't unpleasant. The only issue that I really had was that trying to record and stream in 4K at the same time as running Strapi backend and front end really just messed everything up for me. So we'll see if this is something that I'm able to continue exploring a little bit more. For me right now, it does seem that Payload is, this is hard for me to say because Payload is easier for me to set up, but that's because I'm very experienced with it. Right now, it seems that the typing is better in Payload CMS, but I don't know if Strapi has like built-in types or importable types. I don't like that I have to start 2 servers to communicate with my API. That'll be easier and something that you don't have to worry about when you self-host Strapi. You can just query the API URL instead of having a separate server. But that said, you have different architecture that you need to apply to Strapi, as well as next.js or whatever other front-end network you're using. Unless you're using a mono repo, then you should be able to use the same architecture to some extent. So there are pros and cons to both. Yes, I do like Payload CMS more. I'm not going to defect anytime soon, but I am hoping that this video highlighted some of the good things about both of them and helps people in the future make good decisions about what project or what CMS they should use for their project. I'm going to try and ramble a little bit to see if my computer can recover from what I just put it under, but I don't think it's going to. So I think that means that it's time to call it quits, unfortunately. But thanks everyone for watching this video on how Payload CMS and Strapi compare to one another. I hope you found it helpful. If you'd like, you can subscribe to my channel to get more content like this, where I think critically about the different technologies that we use every day. So whether that's something that I really enjoy, like Payload CMS, and compare it to something that may or may not do just as well, which is Strapi, and I talk about things like that. I have my newsletter, Next in Dev, where I go over all of the important things happening in our industry, so you don't want to miss that. There's a link to subscribe on my website, nlvcodes.com. It's just my YouTube name with no underscores or hyphens or anything like that. Yes, another reason for Payload, I do love that the front end and back end are together if you use next.js, which I do prefer right now. I'm still working with Astro. Anyway, there are ways to support me as well through Patreon or becoming a Google or by becoming a YouTube member. So if you feel so compelled, there are options to do that as well. But regardless, I hope you found this helpful. I'm going to stick around on the stream for a couple of minutes as well, but leave your thoughts in the leave comments and leave your thoughts and comments and suggestions in the comments. And man, I'm trying to do like a little sign off here before, because I'm gonna chop this up and make it into a video. So I want to close it out, and then I'm going to stick around on the stream, but let me get this and then we can figure this out. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe to this video. Nope, I already said all of that. Leave your thoughts, comments, questions in the comments. I'd love to hear from you and incorporate your comments into videos like this one, which started from a YouTube comment. So until then, I'll see you in the next video. But yeah, so this was fun. I enjoyed going through all the things that Strapi has to offer. I learned a lot from this. And so Strapi is something that I did start looking at before Payload CMS. So it wasn't completely foreign to me, but it was something that I just never really dug into. And that was because I was starting to realize that Python wasn't really the way to go for web development like I wanted it to be. So I just started looking at other options as I was learning React and Next. So eventually it just became clear that I would need to find a CMS. I was tired of, like for Python, I created my own CMS and realized that that is just not the way to go. So there's a lot of benefit in finding a headless CMS and finding something that allows you to be flexible without tying you into any kind of like vendor lock-in. So Strapi is a little concerning with the vendor lock-in. Yeah, so the Strapi, like you're kind of tied into the Strapi universe, but I do like that the self-hosted version, you're able to bring your own database, which you can then move to wherever you need to go, which should be Payload CMS. So I'm not convinced. I do like Payload CMS the most. I am biased. I've built my entire YouTube channel based on Payload CMS. So what can I say? It's fun to work with. It makes sense to me. I'm not done thinking about Strapi and how it works and understanding how it works and why I choose Payload CMS over Strapi, but I will come back to this for sure. But yeah, I'm around for a couple more minutes, and then I will sign off and get back to whatever you do on vacation. Interesting. So Storyblock, I have seen, it's mostly been bad that I've seen from Storyblock. So I'm interested to hear more about that, but maybe I just need to do some research and figure out why I've been hearing bad things about it rather than just taking people's word for it. And really, like, I know reading on Reddit is more or less not a great place to get actual information, just with how negative the actual platform is. So maybe I just need to do some research into Storyblock and see. I don't I mean, you mentioned you're sharing accounts with admins. I don't love that. I don't love having someone else having control over my user seats. I am not familiar. I've heard about Cockpit just recently. I don't know what Mongolia is, so I've not worked with that at all. But I've used Keystone. I've now used Strapi a little bit more than in the past. I think I said Keystone. I used Keystone. I've made my own with Flask, which is Python. That didn't last very long. Of course, used WordPress. I've used headless WordPress as well for a project, just because the client wanted to use the WordPress interface. That wasn't terrible, but it's just like a lot of the like custom fields are really hard to make in WordPress without plugins. At least for me, I don't know like back-end WordPress very well. So that was always a hassle. But yeah, I've not tried Sanity or Prismic either. So there are all of these that I want to try just so I can see how Payload compares to all of them. I would like to do a bit more content next year as well around which CMS to choose and how to choose a CMS beyond just like shilling for Payload, which I will continue to do. Paid enterprise. Okay. So that's why I've never used it, because I'm so cheap. I hardly ever pay for a CMS. I hardly pay for anything. Like now I self-host Payload and Next, and that's $60 for the year and I have like 3 or 4 projects on one VPS. I have also been a WordPress hater my entire life. I've only used it when I had to use it. So I love seeing, and I hate to see, but I love to see all of the security vulnerabilities that pop up for WordPress that always just show up in the news because everybody uses it. And then I just see like millions of sites exposed in security vulnerability from plugin. 20% of WordPress users, security vulnerability. So you just see it every single week. And of course, security vulnerabilities are going to happen. We just had 2 big ones with Next and with React. But it seems like the 2 big ones that we had were really big with Next, but it seems like it happens weekly or even like multiple times a week with WordPress. So, and I know a lot of it is with plugins. I'm sure core is very secure, but you can't use WordPress without the plugins. That's the whole point of WordPress, is to be able to extend it using plugins. So that is its own thing. So I'm with you there. But it wasn't bad using, so headless WordPress has, it's called Faust, I think, and that's its next.js fork. And that was pretty okay. It wasn't the easiest to use, and I think I had to use GraphQL, which I don't love GraphQL, but I was able to use it to communicate with the database there. But yeah, that's, I think, all I've got in this video. I've been going for almost 2 hours now, so I think it's time for me to wrap up. But thanks for hanging out. Thanks for chatting. I really enjoyed this. I hope to do a little bit more with Strapi in the future, but it's not going to take the place of Payload CMS anytime soon, especially with all of the work that I've already done with Payload CMS. But all right, well, I should stream again next week. I'll probably talk a little bit. I'll either talk a little bit more about this, or I'll start talking about some of the new features that came out with Payload CMS. We'll see how I'm feeling next week. But I have some videos coming out about React email as well, some filter options filter options with Payload CMS, and some other configuration videos. So thanks everyone for hanging out. I'll see you in the next video.